Irish culture is going through a global boom. I'm Ollie Mann, and this is The Week Unwrapped. Jamie, splitting the G. Can we just first of all define what that is? Because this is the new phrase I've learnt today.
Yes. If you are a Guinness drinker, there is a game that you can play with a pint of Guinness called Splitting the G, which is drinking the Guinness down. Depends how big your gulps are, really, but it's usually like 2.5 big gulps, I would say. And then you can get the level of the pint. Well, there's two games. One is on resting in the middle of the G in the Guinness glass, so when you look at it. And then one that I have also played is above the Guinness line. It's called Splitting the G. I would say it was fun.
If it's called Splitting the G, it's surely about getting it down to the cross-level bit of the G.
Yeah.
Above the G just isn't the game. The second game's wrong.
But some people play different rules and they're idiots.
Anyway, I'm not a ginfluencer, which is another word that I've learned today. But glad we got that out of the way. But it's indicative of the crack pack, another word I've learnt, which is sort of the trend for, you're bringing us this week, Irish culture kind of permeating all culture.
Yes. So the Crack Pack is obviously a play on the Rat Pack and is related to Irish actors that have been dominating popular culture. Actors such as Saoirse Ronan, Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson, Cillian Murphy. I guess the story this week is really off the back of the furore around Kneecap. There was an article in the New Statesman by Faye Curran that I would recommend everyone reads because it's a fairly biting assessment of the kind of London penchant for Irishness and the desire from some left-wing, centre-left people within London to portray themselves as Irish and the kind of love of the Irish. And she's obviously Irish and she's writing it from a perspective of how embarrassing that is. I'm bringing it as a discussion point because obviously Irish culture is there's something called the Green Wave. It's very important. It's a big part of our culture now, not just the actors, but the books, people like Sally Rooney. Also, there is a kind of perception of Ireland as being this place that is quite progressive, pro-Palestine, maybe doesn't have some of the colonial scars, given the fact that they obviously have their own issues with British rule. But I wonder how much of it is to do with our own, within the UK, our own issues with Britishness and and our national identity. Obviously, in the 90s, we had Cool Britannia, and it seemed pretty cool to be part of the UK and Britpop. That isn't the case anymore. I'm gonna put it out there. I don't see.
Yes, this is potentially about our self-loathing. There's uncool Britannia.
I think so.
Let's find an island near us.
There's a fetishization of Irish culture because of how much we hate ourselves as British people.
I think that's doing a bit of a disservice, actually, to the long-standing fascination with Irish culture and more specifically Irish music, Irish literature, film stars, poetry. It disproportionately punches above its weight culturally and artistically and has always done. So I think that, yes, obviously there is a certain element of like a little bit of like, it's as Faye Curran was writing, it's no longer cool to be descended from the oppressors. But Ireland has always punched above its weight in terms of culture and art. And that has always, I mean, you can go back to Riverdance, you can go back to James Joyce, you could like music, traditional poetry and storytelling. I think that we should consider how great a lot of these Irish cultural kind of megaliths are at the same time.
Hold on, but which is it, Harriet? Either, yes, Oscar Wilde, Jonathan Swift, etc., or it's a new thing, the Green Wave, it's coming, look at the big peak in popularity of Irish stuff. Can it be both? Are you saying there's just been sort of a groundswell and now it's reached a peak?
It can definitely be both. I mean, Sally Rooney's Normal People in particular, when it was turned into a TV series in 2020 with Paul Mescal, like obviously that was an enormous global hit. So that really did kind of turbocharge the Green Wave, and then we've got this crack pack of all these actors, and last year Cillian Murphy actually became the first Irish-born man to win the Oscar for Best Actor. And obviously we've got all this major drama around Kneecap, this Belfast-based Northern Irish hip-hop trio who I actually saw play at Glastonbury a couple of weeks ago.
Did you? You and about 150,000 people by the looks of it.
it wasn't 150,000 people. West Holtz, I think, has a capacity for about 30,000, and they shut
by
the
the
field.
looks of it. It was a lot of people.
It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy.
The colonial thing, the colonial aspect of this debate really cracks me up, because when I was reading the articles about this, and people were saying that it's cool to be Irish because you want to align yourself with a nation of white people who don't have this icky, problematic, we once had an empire thing. It's not like Ireland chose not to have an empire. It's not like they were offered an empire and were like, no, we're better than this. They just didn't have one. I'm sure if Ireland had had a chance to have an empire, they would have done. So I find that really, really funny. But what I do think, I completely agree with Harriet. Like, it's not anything new. Like, Irish culture has always, been huge. I mean, I'd lost count trying to name all the bands I grew up with: The Cause, Bewitched, Boyzone, Westlife. It goes on and on and on. Exactly. So it's always been there. Ditto, literature and all the rest of it. But I do think what's more interesting is to examine why Ireland has always punched above its weight culturally. That's the more interesting question.
Well, go on then.
Well, I don't think it's an easy question to answer, and I speak with no authority on the subject whatsoever, except I will say my husband is Irish, so he might be listening to this. But anyway, here's my shot. I think there is a particular alchemy that happens in the cracks between a very strict Catholic society and a very ancient Celtic people who are wild, tortured romantics and always have been. And I think in that's where you find a lot of where they're, fertile ground for their culture. And I would also say that I think a big part of Irish identity is the anti-Englishness. I think that the legacy of their treatment at the hands of the English still plays a very big part of their identity. And you can see that when they do feeling an affinity with Palestine. And I was watching, I don't know if any of you guys were watching the documentary on iPlayer about Live Aid, the 40th anniversary of Live Aid, which was obviously the brainchild of Bob Geldof, and Bono also featured.
And his wife.
Yes, and Bono featured very heavily in it, and he talks about the folk memory of famine. So even though he didn't actually experience the Irish potato blight, and is obviously a huge mega star and very, very wealthy, it was interesting that he brought that up as he had seen these Ethiopians starving. I think there is that sort of anti-Englishness thing and an affinity with oppressed people that can make it a very powerful culture.
More prosaically than that, though, Jamie, I know that, Felicity mentions Kneecap, and obviously they're famously rapping in their native language, but that's new. Isn't it just that Irish people speak English when they make records and books? And, England and Scotland and Wales also punch above our weight, don't we, internationally, because of the British Empire, actually. So it's not as simple as just like people like things that are anti-English. They also like reading and listening to things that are in English, and that's because of the British Empire.
Yeah, I think that's definitely, that definitely plays a part in it. It's interesting with Oasis coming back. They had a huge amount of Irish. There was the Irish flags, and they've tapped into the fact that their family history is Irish. I think it's definitely true that throughout history, Ireland have punched above its weight. I think the other thing that's interesting is when you really dig down deep into it, how progressive is Irish society really? It looks like it's moving forwards because of the kind of ways in which it's beating back against the Catholic state. But this is all, from quite a low base, it's moving forward. And also the trouble that they now have with the right wing and nativist and racism within Ireland is a real issue in terms
the riots
of
we've seen in Northern Ireland this summer.
The debates around what is Irishness and can you be Irish if you're not white, and all of these questions. So it's a caricature of the country to say that they are all these progressive.
Also, just to add to that, Ireland isn't cool because last year it was named the world's 9th most significant tax haven, and everyone, it's kind of like one
That's
of the
kind of
worst
cool.
places.
I would love
for,
to evade tax.
Sure, but in terms of being like progressive and all that sort of thing, they actually, all the stuff about like Apple having to pay back millions or billions of pounds or whatever it was, because Ireland was just like, we're not gonna tax you. So not cool.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a fair bit of tax evasion over here as well. But one thing we haven't mentioned actually about Ireland and Northern Ireland is that they really invest in their artists, I think, in a way that you can say that England is not doing at the moment, and particularly in the last few years with all of the cuts to the arts sector, is that their funding and investment and their like artistic endeavors being kind of tax-free. There are ways in which the Republic in particular supports its artists that we could really learn from. But you just mentioned that the Irish language, and I think that's a really interesting thing that actually is very new, that NECAP in particular are kind of leading this revival in the Irish language. So I think it was quite recently that it was spoken for the first time during PMQs. Duolingo says that more than 2 million people are studying it globally. Mo Cara, who's a member of NECAP, actually went to Belfast's only Irish language secondary school. So it's really interesting that actually there's the number of boys taking the A-level in Irish in Northern Ireland apparently nearly doubled last year. So that is new. And then there's the music aspect, obviously the success of the film Sinners, which features a lot of Irish trad music, a lot of folk ballads, and kind of that really sent a lot of Irish trad music kind of dominating the charts. So that there are ways in which that this is new and this is a resurgence, and that's really interesting.
Okay, however trendy it is, we're going to the pub. I'm buying you all a pint of Guinness. Are you drinking it?
I'm not a massive Guinness fan, I have to say, but I do think it's indicative of you having not spent any time on dating apps in the last few years, because splitting the G is consistently cited on like people like, can you split the G? See, like, I'll take you for a date if you can split it. It's absolutely everywhere. So that in itself like puts me off.
Well, how dare you say I'm out of touch? I've just offered to buy you a Guinness, Harriet. What could be more...
Aren't you married? Like, why would you be on dating apps?
Felicity, would you like a Guinness?
I have enjoyed a pint of Guinness in the past, but now that it's become such a scenester thing, I would steer clear of it because I just think it's so embarrassing.
Jamie, are you really more of a Kilkenny or a Murphy's man?
It was interesting that I was in South East London quite recently, and there were quite a few pubs now that are only stocking Murphy's as a kind of two fingers up to Guinness and Diageo and everything else. So it's obviously moving on. Time is moving on, but I'm still a Guinness fan. It's a good drink. What about you, Ollie?
Well, no, I'm with you. Although next time we're together, let's split the M.